Cheetah's holistic approach to hospitality, with specific emphasis on conservation, will leave you with the very best memories of the African wild. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
I was quite surprised and excited to learn that I had won the Wild Earth prize for March. My wife and I started watching Wild Earth during the lockdown, just to allow us to get out of the day-to-day routine and enjoy some of the bush sightings. Our favorites, of course, are watching the birds when they show them sometimes, and especially the leopards. That's always nice to see on the show. She will definitely be going with me, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy all aspects of the prize, as we don't get out into the bush often enough. Thank you very much, Wild Earth.
With a slew of potential dangers lurking, it's essential to be aware of your surroundings whilst walking in the wilderness.
20 yards away from one of the most endangered species. This is a big bull.
What a moment, what a close encounter with an early bull. He's just over here now. He's moved completely away.
Being on a bushwalk and seeing a leopard, I mean, it's ridiculous to be this close to a leopard on foot and for him not to run is absolutely insane. How crazy was that?
Through the gap there is just the back of the head of a male lion. He is absolutely unaware that we are here right now. I tell you, seeing lions on foot, it definitely brings out the caveman in you, this little scared human being.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Another beautiful day out here in the African bush, and that means the promise for adventure is just there, ready for us to snatch it. We're out here in quarantine, just looking out and listening because lions were seen around here last night. There have been some lion tracks as well. I'm very keen to follow up on them, and there's the wild dogs that could come into Djuma. So I'm very excited. I hope that you are too. We're listening out. Nothing just yet, but I think it's going to get very exciting. So jump on board, everyone, for your live safari through the African bush.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to And Beyond Ngala. My name is Eric. Behind camera today we've got Craig, and this morning we've just actually left the riverbed and we are heading back up into the direction of the last position we had of those lions yesterday. There were a few other vehicles that went in after us, and it looks like the pride might have split up just like we thought. So a few of the adult females took the smallest cubs away, and then the rest of the pride was left sleeping around that same waterhole that they were at the whole day yesterday. So I would imagine that they would have gotten up to move. We're just going to try and work our way into the area and look for tracks. It's a really nice crispy morning. It's the coldest morning I think we've experienced so far this season. And so if we find these lions nice and early, you never know. Maybe they still get up and still move around and be entertaining for us. So that's the plan. Probably about 10 minutes away from where they last left. And we'll head pretty much straight in that direction. It sounds like the lioness and her 3 cubs were walking straight towards the riverbed where she's been keeping them. Jane, I'm also looking forward to it. And last night I was mentioning that I prefer the sunrise drives over the sunset drives, particularly for this reason, as we get to put our tracking skills to the test and try and figure out if we can find the lions and what they might have gotten up to. So that's exactly what we're doing this morning. So I'm excited to be doing it. I hope that we are successful this morning and are able to track them down. So I think we'll start off by looking for that sub-adult group, just because they would have walked a bit further. I think, if we struggle to find them and it's coming towards the end of drive, we might drop into the riverbed where that lioness has been keeping her cubs, because I'm sure that's where they would have been. I think there might be a couple of vehicles that head into that direction anyway, so we'll get the update from them. So we'll start off challenging ourselves a bit to see if we can find out where the males in the sub-adult group went. So as we put our heads down and try and get down into the area of where those lions were last left, let's go across to Tristan for him to say good morning.
Well, good
Like Eric, hopefully you do find your lions. As you can see, it is a beautiful, beautiful start to the day at Kalahari Dam. We are going to be on the dam camp for the morning. Unfortunately, Rusty is still in its little hospital bay, and so won't be up and about just yet. For those of you that don't know which voice this is, kind of find often brings incredible loading over.
Welcome back. Apologies about the signal. We are in the African bush and this does sometimes happen. So we've just come down to the riverbed. Well, not in the river, but we're driving parallel to it now on the left. From here, I'm just going to slow down to see if we can spot the tracks. So we'll be looking forward quite a lot, just looking for any disturbances on the ground. When these lions are moving from one place to another, they'll very often walk along a road. They've got a very good knowledge of what's around this area and how to navigate through it. So if they want to take the most direct routes, they'll often hop onto a road like this. It's nice and quick and easy. I was saying yesterday when they were looking to hunt, it's a nice way to move quite quietly because there's no grass, so they don't have to worry about the rustling of their feet against the grass. Okay, it's starting to get a beautiful morning as the sun is coming out. We're heading towards the west, which will also help us so we're not looking straight into the sun. But hopefully it casts long shadows on the road where we'll be able to pick up the small details of the tracks. Because it was such a cold morning, we might even look in nice open patches along the riverbed and on these roads to see if these lions also didn't feel the cold last night and they might just be resting, trying to warm up. So Megan, I'm not sure. I mean, those lions could definitely... Wow, that is a noisy bird. The lions could definitely have made a kill last night. You know, I think being such a big pride, they'll take every opportunity to hunt that they can because they constantly need to keep providing for each other. And so there's a strong possibility that they would have tried to hunt last night. You know, lions as big as they are and with the amount of individuals moving through this area, sometimes having too many puts them at a disadvantage because it just makes it so much easier for the other prey species to spot them. So their success rate might drop down a little bit, especially if it's that group of young lions who aren't quite as skilled as the older lionesses. So I'm sure they would have tried last night, but who knows if they were successful or not. Sometimes you'll see them and you'll be following tracks and you see the stomach contents of an impala. You might see one or two different carcasses that they caught, and then you find them and they look like they haven't eaten in the last 24 hours. And that's just because there's not a lot of meat on an impala carcass with the amount of lions that there are in that pride. Looks like there are tracks of a hippo on the road. So that would have been from last night as the hippos were looking for different grazing areas. No sign of these lions yet. We are approaching the area, and we're going to spend quite a lot of attention on the road, just looking for those tracks. Another technique we'll use, especially if we are finding tracks, is doing the same thing as we did last night, just switching off, even if it's just for a few moments to listen. These lions, if it's cold like this, they could be calling out in the early morning, sort of marking their territory for the last time before it gets too hot. So we could hear that. And then the distant alarm calls of the other animal species might help us. Okay, so we are nearing the area. On the left-hand side is the pan. And these lions are lying left and right of the road. Okay, first tracks heading down this way. Yeah. Yeah, Craig, I don't know if you want to show. Okay, so we found the tracks. I'm going to get off the vehicle and spend some time looking at them. Let's send you across to Juma.
Good morning and welcome to Wild Earth. We are live at Prideland's Eco Training and currently we're at Ndovo Dam where we're going to start our walk from this morning. It's quite a crisp 12 to 13 degrees Celsius at the moment, but there's not a single cloud in sight, so it will definitely start heating up. We're quite excited to get walking as at least we can get some blood pumping through our body. Now when we start walking in the early mornings, we normally check all the sunny spots as a way of finding animals. So the opposite is also true in the heat of the day when the animals prefer the cooler spots and move into a shade again. I'm sure we're going to have another hot afternoon just like we had yesterday, seeing that there's not a cloud in sight. In the meanwhile, before we start our walk, we just would like to pan over the beautiful Ndovo Dam with a beautiful crisp light at the moment from the sun that's reflecting off the water. This is one of my favorite spots to come in the early morning, and you can really get beautiful sunrise photos from here. This morning when we got here around by 5:30, the dam was just like a mirror. The sun just started peeping out, and it creates the most beautiful reflections of a tree in the backlit sun, with the sun from behind. So our plans is to go and do a circular route for this morning and just see what we can get. But meanwhile, we would like to allow you to also just absorb all those beautiful sounds that nature has to offer.
Sorry about that, guys. You were with me and then you weren't, but now you're back with me, and I've got some dog tracks, but I've actually got the tracks that are not where I expected them to be. I expected them to be further east along Buffalo's cut line, so these are for the wild dogs, but they're actually moving now to the west, so we're going to get going. But I'm not sure if I got an opportunity to say who I am. Hi everyone, it's me, Trishala. I've got a hat on camera. I think you might have left us before I got the opportunity to say hi. So hi. I hope that you will enjoy your safari with us this morning. I was going to say this afternoon. But let's turn around and follow. Now it's not unlikely that they've moved from the area they were in, because it's already starting to warm up a little bit. I mean, it's by any means hot, but it's definitely starting to warm up. So it's about 14 degrees Celsius, 57 degrees Fahrenheit here on Djuma. So let's follow these. What's nice about the morning is that you can easily tell when tracks are on top of others because everything's fresh. So I've lost them now, so they look like they went in here. This one sits still on the road. We've just come from this area, so I know that they're not there. But what this means is they could be anywhere now. And they could have moved, they would have moved so fast. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take Buffelshoek Cut Line to the west fully. Let's just check this Buffelshoek Junction. There's lots and lots and lots of tracks around. Tracks for the dogs, tracks for the lions, tracks for a male leopard. All around. And I like for this, in this first hour, to basically cover as much distance as I can, because more than likely the animals that we're looking for are going to be moving. So it requires a little less intense tracking in the sense of looking for every track and seeing where they turned and things like that, because you want to travel as many roads as possible and see if they come out onto the roads or you see them moving. It tends to be a little bit more fruitful that way because you are moving and gaining on them, whereas if we're stopping for every track, as much as we need it for an indication, as long as we can just see it, that's sufficient for this time of day. My bet would be that the dogs move towards quarantine if they're tucked in there, because now I've not seen tracks for the pack again, so they've probably ducked towards quarantine. So we're going to do the same. Going to drive.
Do you dream of traveling to a far-flung wilderness location where life continues as normal? A place where you can escape to nature and breathe. If you become a Wild Earth explorer, then this could soon become a reality. Subscribe today and stand a chance to win regular travel prizes. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
So in 1998, we had this idea to go and put a live web camera on a waterhole somewhere in the Sabi Sands next to the Kruger National Park. And I approached just about every single landowner and everybody thought I was completely crazy until I met Yuri and Pippa Moorman.
We thought it was definitely a fun idea and a worthwhile thing to experiment.
And it immediately became a runaway success. And it gave people all around the world the opportunity to watch a little piece of Africa day and night. Back in 1998, it was the very early stages of the internet. And all we were able to do was to get a 30-second refreshing JPEG out of that camera. But over time, what we began to do is focus more and more on trying to develop this concept of giving people the opportunity to go on safari.
Even though we live just 500 meters up this hill, we still put the camera on to see what's happening.
Absolutely, we watch it ourselves.
I got into wildlife filmmaking because of a passion for nature and a notion that I could make a difference. Helping others fall in love with nature brings meaning to what I do. It's also a lot of fun. A couple of times per week, we receive some very heartfelt messages from viewers telling us about how Wild Earth has made a difference in their life, whether it's helped them through a difficult period or simply helped them to reconnect with nature. I think that's why we do what we do.
Guys, just watch what's happening. See, watch the elephants, watch the lions. See, the first ones to run are the cubs. Can you see them? They are right here. I'm not sure how scared you were, but I was quite nervous. But absolutely incredible.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Well, let's try this again, and hopefully we'll be able to keep up with our hippos for a little bit. They obviously are sleeping and taking it easy, but it's just such a beautiful picture with the kind of mist rolling across the water and the sun rising in the background, and our hippos lounging about. They would have gotten back into the dam just before sunrise, and it's now time to have a good rest. You can imagine these guys have been, unfortunately, walking around all night, so they'll be tired from doing that, and it's now time for them to have a little break and have a little nap. And it's why they've come right up to the edge of the water where they can rest their head, and they'll be able to then kind of sit and sleep and wait for, you know, the day to kind of get up and going, and then eventually start to see them sort of milling about, and then tonight again out and about. You can also see in the background there a little disturbance on the water. That'll be fish chasing each other on the back end of the hippos, which is quite common to see fish kind of right on the tail end of hippos. Sipo, you're asking if hippos wander alone at night or in groups? Both. So big males, like the guy on the right there, isn't it cool when he blows air out? You can see all the kind of steam coming out of their noses. These guys, the big males, will walk around on their own. They're not going to really be in groups, but female with her young ones, and sometimes even 2 or 3 females, can be kind of seen plodding along. But generally, the further away they get from water, the more they split up, and the more kind of solitary they become. Sometimes at night, you'll find a couple of them kind of feeding on the banks close to water, but as soon as it kind of gets further away, generally you find them on their own, or a female with her. If she's got a smallish calf, then that one can be with her, but they generally don't go far from the water at all. A little baby hippo is very vulnerable when it's small. Things like lions, obviously hyenas are quite dangerous to them, and so you find she'll stay very close to water. She'll feed right on the sort of periphery of the water hole, and come back in. Isn't that cool? Look at the steam coming out of his nose. That's epic. Just now when he was grunting, you could kind of see all the steam flying out as he was doing it. We'll try and sit on him for a bit. He's a little bit more active than the other two. Let's see if we can get a cool kind of close-up. There we go. Of his ears flicking water. Now, the reason why they flick water like that is if you look when he goes under, do you see how his ear turns and folds? Now, that ear is folding to try and stop water going in. But as they come up, because of the shape of their ear, it often cups a little bit of water. And so when they come up, that flick is throwing all the water that's been caught up in the ear out, so that when they actually are listening, there's water not draining into the inner eardrum. I know many of you that have swum regularly will know what it's like to have water in the ears. It's not a very comfortable experience. No one really likes to have kind of water sort of stuck in there, and sort of imagine it would be the exact same for them. So they kind of discharge that water. But you'll find he'll lie like this with his head under for a little bit, and then will come up. You can often see with hippos, a lot of people think that they hold their breath for hours on end. They don't. They actually have a relatively short breath compared to a lot of other animals. Considering their size and the size of their lungs, they should theoretically be able to hold their breath for much longer than they do. They only hold their breath for about 5 to 7 minutes. Now, people who are much smaller, with a much smaller lung capacity, some people can, if they train and try and kind of use their lungs properly, will be able to even get up as much as 5 minutes themselves. So it's not actually that long that they're under. You'll see he'll just constantly kind of go under and up and under and up, just to make sure that he's getting the oxygen that he needs. Now in the background also, you might notice, I don't know if the camera's going to be able to do it because it does lose a bit of quality if we go too far. We'll try. But there's little insects moving around on the water surface. Those are little whirligig beetles that are making a little bit of a kind of mess on this sort of top there, and we'll chat about them a little bit later. But it sounds like JP on his walk has found something also in water.
Good morning and welcome back to Pridelands. We are still at Ndlovu Dam, just watching our hippo. Now, one of the questions I often get asked, what is the function of a hippopotamus? One of those functions is to actually go out at night and to go and graze where they feed on grass. So they create lawn-like little pastures which other animals will also benefit from. But we also find that they release a large amount of nutrients into the water by means of their feces, which then will support a number of detritus-eating fish species, which will support other carnivorous fish species and also species such as crocodiles. Another function that they also perform is to keep waterways open by trampling and creating little paths where the water can flow through. But this also helps for fish to migrate through when they are, by creating these paths when the wetlands are flooded. One of the things I also find quite interesting is that hippos have actually been used in terms of biological control, especially in the Western Cape, where water hyacinth and other water plants can take over entire dams. The hippo has been brought in. Now, under normal conditions, they will feed on grass and very seldom on water plants. However, in those areas where there wasn't sufficient grass, their focus was feeding on the water hyacinth and removing it from the water bodies. Historically, hippopotamus used to occur in the Western Cape as well, and there's early records from the 1650s where one of the earliest of the Dutch governors actually noted in his journal where they shot a hippo very close by to the modern-day castle, which is in Cape Town. Now, one of the other things I find particularly interesting about hippos, but where their numbers are excessively high, that can also lead to actually poisoning the water. When they release a large amount of nutrients through the feces in the water, especially at the end of the water, when the water becomes stagnant, there's a large algal bloom, which can then poison a number of animals that will come and drink from the water. We're going to continue our walk, but in the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over to Trishala, who is currently bumbling around.
I'm just bumbling with intent, which I think is better than just bumbling. So we're on the western side of quarantine now. I've seen tracks for the lions going towards power lines, so we will check that out once we do a quick loop here on quarantine, just in case the dogs have come down. I haven't picked up any tracks again, but like I said to you before, coming down from that northern boundary into Djuma, they could be anywhere. So it's just a matter of looking for tracks for them everywhere we go and hope that we'll be fruitful. But because of their speed and their agility, usually if you just stay put for a little while, you'll get some sort of clue. You'll hear them or you'll see them. Well, just saw Impala running and I went, but it was not serious. Oh, let's just watch from here because often they'll stop sparring if we're very close. It also gives a good opportunity to just sit and listen as well. This is a great space for wild dogs to hunt. You know this. We've come to quarantine very often to watch wild dogs hunt. It's nice and open. It's easy to see them. It's easy to see them and not disrupt their hunt at all. Now these guys want nothing to do with us. That's okay. Hi Kevin, you'd like to know if the bachelor had split during the rutting season? Yes, they do. So during the rut, the rams will start to hold territories that are excluding everybody else. So the purpose of a territory means that you are defending that area against any other animal of the same sex, same species and same sex. So let's just keep on moving. So those bachelor herds will split. You don't always see them split because those ones that are in bad condition, they'll stay together and form bachelor herds again, and then the ones that are in good condition, they start to form their territories, and that's quite a cycle. The whole territory is for about a week to 10 days at most, and when they do that, they're basically not feeding, not grooming correctly and things like that. They lose condition, and then when they lose condition, when they're challenged for that territory, they're defeated. Then they'll go back, lick their wounds, sometimes literally, form a group with other males until they recover again and then fight for a territory again. Impalas have a very sort of mixed type of groupings. Sometimes it's bachelor herds, sometimes it's mixed herds, sometimes the males are holding territories, like during the rut. So it's sometimes very loose descriptions of their aggregations. I don't see any promising evidence just yet for the dogs. So let's just hope. Luckily, Tristan is on the dam cam, so if he sees the dogs, he'll be able to let me know. But speaking of the dam cam, why don't you go over and see what he's found now?
Well, I mean, it would be quite nice if we saw wild dogs. I mean, we would not be doing a lot of birding like we are now. I've just been scanning around trying to see what I can find. There's two little Cape turtle doves that are going about their morning's work, trying to kind of get breakfast and find all kinds of little tasty morsels inside here. There's obviously a little patch of food that they're finding, because just now there was 3 of them, as well as about 4 blacksmith lapwings that were all in this little open patch. You can see there comes the 3rd one now, just from the right of the screen, and they're kind of just doing their typical little dove thing, which is to walk around with their little heads bobbing, and then every now and then, you know, just kind of see these little feet picking up and going. Now, this behavior that you see here is actually quite important for us for finding bigger animals. Now, you might wonder why that would be the case. It's because doves do this on roads. And so when you are kind of out there early in the morning and you tracking, and so like Tswalu with the lions or with the wild dogs, what you look for is you look for birds like these guys. So them, bronze-winged coursers, even things like owls and thick-knees, they walk on the roads a lot. Now, bronze-winged coursers and thick-knees will be more at night. So if their track is on top of the predator track or the track that you're trying to follow, then you know that it's early in the evening that animal walked. Whereas if these guys are walking around and you find the track on top of them, then you typically know that you're right there close to where that predator is. Or if they've walked over the top of the predator's track, then you know it's probably in the early hours of the morning if it's still on top of the coursers or thick knees. So then you can kind of time frame where exactly these tracks are, how old the tracks are. So these guys are actually quite important. As soon as I see dove tracks over any sort of print, if it's early morning and about this time, then you know that the track is probably during the night and not from this morning. But if you see it over the top, then those typically are very, very fresh tracks that you're following. Now, of course, doves can walk there in the afternoon, the day before, but generally, because of the density of vehicles and the amounts that they drive around, you often know that the afternoon before vehicles have traveled in that area and therefore have probably squashed any tracks from the day before. But you can see it's kind of like a little open patch here, and you can see how many birds there are. If you just look in the grass, you'll find little kind of movement all over the place. Lots and lots of doves that are finding whatever it is that they're eating in this little sort of clear patch. Don't know what it is that they're finding, but whatever, it must be pretty tasty. These guys will spend most of their morning doing this, and then eventually they'll kind of get tired of it and fly off. Oh, Matthew, for these guys, they've got a tough time, unfortunately. There's a number of different things that eat them. So when they're on the ground like this, things like pythons would be a big problem for them, even black mambas to a degree, although mambas typically hunt in the trees themselves and often try and find nests, and then they'll kind of eat the birds out of the nest, and when the adults try and sort of dissuade them from going into the nest, they often grab adults too. But pythons would be something. Mongoose, if it's very quick. Genets, civets. Then if in the air, it's going to be obviously birds of prey. So here, we don't get a lot of falcons. But if you go into the Kalahari region, so Tswalu, that area, the Lana falcons absolutely hammer the doves and sandgrouse around there. Here you would find some of your birds of prey that would try this would be, on Cape turtle doves, would be things like African goshawk. They would go after them, dark chanting goshawk. What else? Even African hawk eagles, if to a degree. It's not really a great size meal for them because of how big they are, but if there's an opportunity, they'll take it and they'll grab one of these little guys. So yeah, it's mostly birds of prey for them. I've also seen leopards take them. In fact, there was a leopard that's part of the same lineage that we see now with Tundi, so one of Karula's sons, called Shivambalana. Now, Shivambalana in the local language here is a emerald-spotted wood dove. And that's basically part of the reason why it was called that, is one of the first kills that anyone ever saw him make was an emerald-spotted wood dove. He was sitting on a termite mound and this dove came flying past and he jumped up and grabbed it. So leopards will go after them. Even some of the smaller cats, things like caracal, hunt them a lot. Serval, not so much, but again, opportunistic, but like most cats. So if an opportunity presents itself, they'll jump up and grab them as well. So not lots of predators for a bird of this size. That's why they're quite flighty birds. If you'll see if things move, they kind of take off pretty quickly. And you notice that when they're feeding, much like a cheetah would feed, they feed quite quickly and then every now and then pop their head up just to look around to make sure that they're not going to be caught off guard. Just trying to think what else would hunt them. Wahlberg's eagles, also seen them go after these guys. But yeah, lots and lots of different predators. All right, we're going to leave these little doves to carry on their morning's business. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Eric and see how he's going at Ngala.
So, we're back in the Timbavati River, and like I was mentioning, we had tracks of the pride that were heading straight towards where that female was keeping her 3 young cubs. And so I made the mistake of thinking that I knew what these lions were up to, trying to predict their behavior and loop around in front of them. And it turns out that the majority of the pride have turned and gone in the complete opposite direction away from us. So now that we're in the riverbed, we'll check the den site. Now, we still have got tracks of a few individuals going down there, so we haven't lost all hope yet. But if we don't find anything here, then we'll have to loop back around towards where the rest of the pride was heading towards last night. It's I think one of the big mistakes we make when we're trying to follow animals is we think we know what they're going to do. So instead of following the tracks where they basically will tell us where they're going, we try and outsmart them and predict where they're going. And so making this big loop this morning was a mistake on my part. But luckily we've got other vehicles out and they managed to find the tracks on another road that's slightly further to the right of us. So up ahead there are quite a few thickets somewhere around here, and that's where she gave birth and was denning. So, Nicola, when those young males decide to leave the pride, they probably won't stay on Ngala, unfortunately. And the reason being is they tend to leave at 2.5, 3 years old, which means that they've got another 3 years or so to come into their prime and for them to really stand a chance of challenging for territory. And in that time, they just get chased further and further and further away by the other dominant males in the area. So within this area, it could even be their fathers that chase them away. Then they move from out of their father's territory into another territory of other male lions, and then they get chased even further and further and further until eventually they start settling down and trying to take over a new pride. And it's a really natural way of trying to reduce the risk of mating with relatives. So these males get chased away so far that in theory the chance of them coming back and mating with their sisters or their daughters or their mothers reduces quite substantially. So within this group there are 3 males, and they've got a very good chance of surviving if they work well together. And having 3 big strong males is quite a force to be reckoned with. So there's a really good chance that if they make it past that adolescent period from leaving their own maternal pride to starting their new pride, they will become quite successful. Now, see, there are still tracks here. There weren't any sign of them in the river. Maybe we'll do another, almost like a figure of 8 around this area. So the most challenging part for young males is the time when they get chased away, because they're not very effective hunters, so they're often quite skinny and they don't really have the confidence and the skill to hunt themselves. And then their biggest threat is other male lions in the area, and if they see 3 young males within their own territory, they'll consider them as a big threat and they'll try and chase them away. And so if they manage to scavenge and occasionally hunt themselves and avoid male lions, we might be looking at quite a formidable force. And so, Dave, that's actually quite a good question. What is that in the distance? There's Impala up ahead. I thought that might be them. So, Dave, we just look at other signs, and looking at tracks of other animals might help a lot. And so, I'm actually just going to turn around here because there's no more tracks. We'll go back into the riverbed this side. So, one thing that helps is other nocturnal animals. So, things like genets and water or spotted thickneys. If they're on top of the tracks, we know that it's from last night. Sometimes, I mean, at this time of year, we don't really get a dew point, but sometimes in the summer months, you'll see this fine layer of moisture on the tracks. So there's a few different ways. I mean, we're quite lucky that we know exactly where these lions were at sunset, so we just come straight back to the last position. We get to follow them that way. So this is the last place here that we saw the tracks, and I'm sure it will just be a few individuals. And one thing that's quite tricky at this time of year is correctly aging the tracks if you don't know where they've been, because it's very calm and still during the night, and that just preserves the tracks really well. So sometimes you can come past an area and look at a track that's 3 or 4 days old and you might think that it looks extremely fresh. But just walking up and down and looking for those other signs of thickneys and genets always helps.
On the 27th of April, Wild Earth will be turning 14 years old, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of you. And to celebrate, we will be finishing the beautiful book that we started last year that looks at the history so far. But we do need you to be part of it. Please submit your most memorable sighting, or what Wild Earth means to you, or even just your name and a comment to be included inside the book. Head over to the website to add your name and reserve your copy. And a big thank you to all of you who have contributed to the book so far.
I was quite surprised and excited to learn that I had won the Wild Earth prize for March. My wife and I started watching Wild Earth during the lockdown, just to allow us to get out of the day-to-day routine and enjoy some of the bush sightings. Our favorites, of course, are watching the birds when they show them sometimes, and especially the leopards. That's always nice to see on the show. She will definitely be going with me, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy all aspects of the prize, as we don't get out into the bush often enough. Thank you very much, Wild Earth.
Hi, my name is Tristan Dix, and I am a guide here at Djuma Private Game Reserve for Wild Earth. We love connecting you to the African bush, and we always look forward to all of your questions. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, you'll need to register on the website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit a question below the live feed. Catch up with me on Wild Earth.
We have a baby pangolin, a baby pangolin. This is off the charts. This animal is about from your fingertips to your elbow. That's the total length of this animal. This is unreal. This is unreal. This is unreal. This is like now my 4th Christmas in a week. We should do this more often.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
So while following Warthog tracks, obviously I had the tracks of the lions as well, so I decided let's follow them. And it was very fruitful. Look at these beauties. I'm not sure what or which pride we have at the moment. I just see these 3. Isn't it lovely? Don't they look just amazing in this grass? Tall grass. Their tracks took us from Impalas, but shouting at them. The tracks took us from quarantine when we just started. We had them, and they moved across power lines all the way down here to the Impala Plains. Now you're talking about tracking and how difficult it can be. It really can be very difficult. But it's those much fewer times that you're successful in tracking compared to the amount of times that you try, that you find tracks. It's those few times that keep you wanting to track. Keeping a bit of a distance away from them so that they have an opportunity if they want, because there's lots of impalas that are rutting around. I can hear them. And it looks like there's only 3 of them as far as we can see, but like I said, yes, this grass is so long. I mean, they could all be around. They just need to pick up their hits. Mariana, you're asking if a lone lion can integrate into a pride. They can, but it most often happens. Sorry, I just saw something move in the distance. It most often happens if it's a pride that they've, oh, it's just some Impala, that they already either were part of as a youngster, as a cub, and then they broke away. Look, she's watching that. Those Impalas are going crazy there, Rutting. So sometimes, for example, the Telematis and the Nkuhumas, a lot of their members were shed because the Nkuhumas were a breakaway from them. And so that Telemati male, about 3 years ago or so, he came into the Nkuhumas and he was with them for a little bit before he dispersed. And usually when a lion is integrated into another pride, it will be a pride that they're familiar with, that maybe as a cub they were part of, or were one half of a breakaway, something like that. But as for integration just randomly, I'm sure it can happen. And I'm sure it has happened. With coalitions, it happens more often, just because males will meet up. And sometimes they can be males that were once rivals, have nothing to do with each other in a positive way, and then they form coalitions. Actually, a great example of that is Cecil the Lion, really, really famous lion. So much work and research was done with him, and obviously he was killed by hunters. Not very long ago, actually. It's a shame that can still happen at this, this day and age. But anyway, so Cecil had brothers that he would have formed a coalition with, but then his brothers were killed by another male lion. His name was Jericho. But then later on, Jericho and Cecil formed a coalition. So it just goes to show that, basically they were mortal enemies at the time. Because Jericho killed his actual brother. But then they formed a coalition. Very nice. Well, you saw us just as we basically just found the lion, so I'm going to call them in. I'm going to send you over to Tristan. He's found a family at the dam camp.
And more than just a family, it's a hive of activity in the one little corner of the dam. You've got the hippos, mom and little one, then you've got all of the water thickneys, and then a whole family of knob-billed ducks. I initially thought that they were Egyptian geese when we first saw them, because it's kind of against the light and not easy to make out their markings, but we'll follow them because they're just a hive of activity at the moment. They're mountaineering ducks for now, for the reason that there is hippos. They were trying to go along the edge of the dam, but the hippos were unfortunately in the way. Isn't their little family cute? These ducks have done really well. It looks like two mothers that are here. It doesn't look like that there's just one set of ducks that have kind of been raised. They're very quick as well. They move super fast, and it's because I think they're feeding this morning. They're trying to get to the vegetation. You see there's like these little vegetated parts that are on the edges of the dam. Now those areas are the perfect place for them to filter feed. Remember that a lot of these ducks are filter feeders. There's a little three-banded plover in amongst them as well now. Unfortunately, it is very much against the light, and they're going further away from the camera, so it's difficult to kind of see, but you can see that glowing on the surface of the water. Very, very pretty this morning. But yeah, they get into that vegetation, and then from there, like I said, they filter feed, and earlier they were kind of in and out, and the little ones were going under, and it was a lot of activity that was taking place. I don't know where mom is taking them. We're going to go behind. That's weird. They're going out of the dam completely. that's out of the dam and into the outflow. There's the dam wall coming to the right-hand side, so I'm not sure where they're off to. Very, very weird. Okay, you lot. Well, enjoy your morning walk. Maybe it's exercise time. Mom has spoken. The kids have been lazy on the couch too much. And so now it's time for some exercise. Let's just go back and see what the hippos are up to, because they seem to be moving a little bit. Oh, look at how cute that is. Little one is yawning. So 50, you say, what a great sighting. It was a very cool sighting, wasn't it? It's just not often we get to spend a lot of time with little goslings. Oh, I suppose those aren't really. I suppose they are, actually. Look at the little one yawning. Let's see if that little tongue comes up again. That's very, very, very cute. Hello, little one. I'm going to go bite Mom's ear. Just go and make sure she knows that I'm here. You can see the thick knees aren't too worried about it. I was hoping that they were going to wake up a little bit, these guys. Always cool when they do. Hippos are such amazing creatures. You know, obviously we don't spend that much time with them because generally they are not that active. But when you think about how they're able to survive and how they go about their business and kind of what they are, they're pretty incredible creatures. Their ability to live a life that is both in water and on land is quite unique. There's very, very few animals that can do that, bar maybe things like terrapins. And so they're fascinating from a mammal perspective to watch. There's obviously things like otters and the likes, but they, I suppose, are far more aquatic than terrestrial. These guys are probably pretty equal, spending half their time in water and half their time out. Now the water thickneys at the back, they won't worry at all about obviously hippos being close. These guys were a little bit irritated when the duck family came through, because they just kind of trot all over the place, and if they've got any eggs nearby, often what you'll see with these guys is that they'll lift their wings and try and kind of escort everybody around, which is pretty much what they did. The ducks were trying to go from where the branch is into the water, and they ended up having to go a bit of 4x4ing through the grass and then up the bank around these thick knees as they kind of chased the ducks off. Now in this area we get two different types of thick knees. So you get water and spotted. Obviously this is right next to water, so that's one of the easy ways to tell them. But what you're looking for is that little white line on the wing. That's what really kind of gives away water thick knees from spotted. All right, our little hippo family seems to be changing position. Everybody is on a mission. Now talking about on a mission, I'm sure JP has been missioning about Pridelands. It seems like he's found something to show all of us.
Good morning and welcome back to Pridelands. We're currently still on bushwalk, and as it became down this little footpath, we found an incredibly large snake track that we've been following for the last almost 50-60 meters. We're not quite sure yet what it is, but it can potentially be a puff adder, or it might even be a python, which might have created this. At some points, the disturbances that has been created is fairly thin, and then at other points we can see where the snake was constricting and where the snake was actually taking on an S motion or serpentine motion, that the movements became bigger, and we can see how the soil has been disturbed in this area. It's possible that if I look at the thinner sections, that it might be puff adder, but yeah, maybe it's also python. It's difficult to say. And as we find that sometimes snakes can use more than one type of locomotion in terms of movement, and it's not always set in stone that they'll only use a serpentine motion or a caterpillar motion where they contract and expand the belly scales to move forward. I'm just going to see where this guy has gone. It's possible that he's busy tracking down the prey. I doubt that they're actually looking after mates at the moment. Good morning, Leslie Ann, and welcome to the show. What we can tell you, this has been done in the last few hours because of how smooth the soil is. Most likely what has happened is the snake has come to lie up somewhere on the side of a road as soon as the sun came out, so most likely in the last hour or so, and then started heating up its body and became active. There's no tracks of any of the day active species that has moved around the area that's over the track so far. So we suspect that it's been, as I say, in the last hour or two that the snake might have moved over here. Just going to see where it's going. So quite often when snakes are tracking down their food, they will use their tongues by flicking them out and pulling them back in. So most of you might know that snakes have got a forked tongue, and that's how they taste for air. Then they put these back into little pits, which forms part of an organ that's called the Jacobson's organ, which then analyzes those scents. And that's how the snake will then interpret its environment. So your snake is still going over here. Seems if he's still going down the footpath over here. There's some disturbances. I really wonder where he's gone. It seems now he's moved into the grass, and he might have taken up a little spot somewhere over here. So let's just keep our eyes open. If it's a python, it might actually go into the lower branches. They quite often will go and bask in the sun, and then also wait for birds, and then they will be in striking distance. A puff adder, however, they find it slightly more difficult to get into vegetation. However, they do sometimes get into low shrub, but they can too expose themselves to the sun. They can increase their body temperature, but they can become active. Unlike us, they don't burn carbohydrates and fats in the same way. They use the energy that they have in a very sparingly manner, and that's why snakes can also then go without a meal for up to a year at a time. So they can go without food for incredibly long times once they've had a sufficiently large meal. One of the most fascinating kills I've actually seen with a Southern African python was that of a steenbok. And the python that I did find was over 3.5 meters in length when I tracked it. And when I got to it, I actually saw a second snake. And what we found was, as it located on the second snake, it was obviously looking for a mate. But the second snake was a female, which was even larger. And she was approximately 4.5 meters in length. And she just caught a steenbok. And what I did see is that the second steenbok was actually watching them from the side, keeping an eye on the python, while the mate was being consumed and constricted by the python. When it comes to pythons, unlike other snakes, they do not use venom to kill their prey. They use constriction, and they will then basically wrap their whole body around the prey item and constrict the movement of air as well as blood, reaching the vital areas.
Well, it would be cool if JP can actually find the snake. Sometimes snake tracking is not very easy, but you can be rewarded, particularly in cold weather like we're having now. Sometimes you can find the snakes kind of just sitting, trying to sun themselves early in the morning. Anyway, talking about snakes, this is something that, an Egyptian goose would be quite scared of. So they often would make quite a lot of noise if they were to see a snake, particularly pythons. Pythons would be a bit dangerous for Egyptian geese. Unfortunately, they're quite far away, these guys. They're on the opposite side of the dam. Everything seems to be that side this morning. There's not even a single sign of an animal yet besides the hippos. Egyptian geese, why behind the stump? Anyway, you can see they're quite far away. But there's no animals around at all, and I'm pretty sure that's because most of the wildebeest, impala, those kinds of things are all hanging around up on quarantine itself. The grass is much shorter there now, and so a lot safer for them to be there. What's that? Is that another Egyptian goose? Sometimes when you're on this dam cam, it's like these little weed beds. Oh, it's a hardy-dar. Hey, little hardy-dar. haven't seen one of these in a while. They often like to be around the dam cam, and they like to walk around on the edges of the water where it's got nice soft ground, and they use that long probing beak in order to find the food that they're looking for, particularly little earthworms. That's something that they like, and crickets. Something else that we see now, uncommon to see one on its own. Generally, you see two together, particularly here at Yuma, this little pair that hangs around the dam. There's normally two of them, maybe the other one's just feeding somewhere where we can't see it. Fortunately, it's gone in behind a lot of grass at the moment. I'll just wait and see if it comes feeding its way back out. Often with birds, when they're feeding like this, they typically don't stay hidden for long. So, sorry, I didn't catch that. I know, Lilypan, you're asking about Egyptian geese, but I didn't get the rest of the question. You can just repeat that for me, Gwen. Where do Egyptian geese sleep? Normally in trees. So, this hardy-dar is a little bit hidden, so we'll come back to that now, and I'll show you quickly where Egyptian geese often will rest. So they'll be on the ground a lot of the time. There's a hornbill. And so they'll sit somewhere where it's quite open, like on the fringes of the small little pan that you see in front. And if there's anything that disturbs, then they just fly up into a dead tree like these two that you see there. They'll just kind of sit in those trees and wait for the threat to pass. But otherwise, they spend most of their time on the ground. Where did our hornbill go now? So they pretty much ground dwelling for the most part. Like I say, even in terms of sleeping, they'll spend their time on the ground, and only when there's something that comes along that disturbs them will they kind of move around. So we've got two little hornbills here. Both look like red-bills that are bouncing about. Pretty common to see them. A lot of these birds will start to show themselves at this time of the day. It's now getting to that point where everybody's warmed up a little bit, and it's the perfect time to be actively feeding. There's lots of insects still about in this long grass. You can see the grass is starting to change color now, though. The green is fading very quickly and becoming that straw browny kind of color. And so with that, the plethora of food that has been around for hornbills and various other birds is slowly going to start to come to an end, and it's going to become a lot more difficult. You might have also seen in the background there was, just try and see if we can see it coming out. Again, there was a little banded groundling that went past as well, which is a type of dragonfly. They zoom about on the fringes of these little watery areas, and beautiful little things, the males with the black spots on the wings. Okay, not really. It's why buffalo and or grazers in particular start to lose a bit of condition through the winter months. The brown grass really kind of is devoid of anything worthwhile. The root systems of that grass still holds nutrients, and it's why when you watch elephants in the winter, they pull grass up, but they feed only on the roots. They don't feed on any of the stuff that we see above ground, because most of that is pretty much devoid of nutrients, and it becomes very dry and almost sticky. Maybe I don't know where you live, Kay, but if you ever in a place where you get natural bush like this, and it doesn't have to be here in Africa, if you go and pick grass when it's green and in summer, it's got a lot of moisture in it, and a lot of the grasses actually have quite a kind of sweet taste if you bite them. Whereas in winter, if you pick it, it becomes very sticky, very dry, and there's nothing actually to it. It's pretty much just roughage more than anything else for animals, but they don't get a lot of nutrients from it. And it's why in the drought, you found, or not even in the drought, but in winter times, if it's been a kind of bad year from there we go, a little grasshopper. If it's been a bad year from a kind of rain point of view and the grass hasn't grown well and they haven't fed well in summer, often grazers will start turning to browsing. They'll start to eat leaves if they can. Look at this hornbill. That's very cool. A little grasshopper that it's found in the grass there. That's a nice morsel for a hornbill. These guys are obviously like little miniature ground hornbills, isn't it? They'll eat pretty much anything that they can find that they can fit into their mouth. So whether that be grasshoppers or crickets or worms or caterpillars or pretty much anything like that they can swallow. You can see it's quite windy today actually, so the camera will move a little bit on its own, unfortunately, because of the wind. I love how these guys bounce around. They've got this little hop rather than a walk. So you saw with the doves earlier, the doves kind of walk, whereas these guys bounce. And they've got the coolest little track, these guys. They look like little human feet because of the shape of their foot, and then obviously the way that they walk and the sand and all those kinds of things, because often you see their tracks only in soft sand. They've got these like little human-shaped feet, which are very, very cool. I think if we stay with it for long enough, we'll probably see it make another little kill. No, it's now flown away. It's because I've just said that. Maybe its partner flew off as well. Martin, you're asking why there's usually dead trees near dams or in dams. So what's happened here is, let me just go to this dead tree so we can explain this quickly. A dam generally is human-made, right? There's very few dams in this world that are not made. In fact, that's basically what a dam is that we have put up a wall to stop a natural drainage, and that then fills up. Now, when it fills up, the area around it is normally got lots of big trees. Big trees like to grow near water, and when the water kind of floods up and the tree becomes saturated, it actually can kill the tree. So the tree gets too much water. If you have a garden and you put a tree there and just drown it in water and don't ever let it kind of grow properly, you'll find that the tree will start to die off. And that's basically what's happened here. In this particular dam is all these dead trees that you're seeing in the water itself have died due to an oversupply of water. The ones that you see outside of the dam, so let's see, there's one straight in the middle of the frame at the moment. This guy over here is slightly different. This is dead because of elephant pressure. So this tree was ring-barked. The elephant has stripped all the layers of cambium off of it, and the tree has then died. It's got no ability to survive once the bark has been stripped all the way around, and so that's why this tree is not alive. The ones in the water is just an oversupply of water. The ones around the water is elephant pressure, and in natural systems like this where you get elephants, it's quite common to see a lot of dead trees. And if I just kind of sort of scan across, you'll see lots of these dead sticky trees around, and that's because in this area, when you have large water source like this, it's a very common place for ellies to come, and therefore the trees around the water get a lot more pressure than the trees away from water. So that's why we end up with a lot of those dead trees all over the place. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else around. The dam seems to be quite quiet now. The hippos came down this side. They like to lie this way. The dam wall is also quiet. All right, well, let's see how we go, and let's see what else we can find on the dam cam. So far, no animals have come down, but I'm sure they will. In the meantime, let's send you to Trish and see how her tracking mission is going.
Well, I've lost them, but luckily in a block that's not too small. So they're between Impala Road and Power Lines and Triple M, that little U shape. So it's three sub-adults, I would say. One young male and two females. But the tracks that I had for them were off the pride, not of just three individuals. So maybe they've gone to meet up with the rest, which is hopefully what's happened. In that case, we could find the rest of them. But this block is, especially in this section, is quite thick. So I'm gonna have to find a spot where it looks like I can actually drive through. And when they go flat in here, I'm very unlikely to find them. Here's a nice spot. Okay, let's try driving through in here. Kelly, you'd like to know why do prides separate and then come back together? That's because the pride is a family and it's not essential for them to stay together. Just in the same way as it's not essential for you to always stay with your family, you can also go out and see the world without them, but always come back to them. Standing by, Bernie.
Yeah, there's no signs of them having crossed.
Okay. Copy that. I'm still in the block trying to locate them.
Coming back down from the north. I'll let you know how we go.
Okay. Yeah, so in the same way as you don't always need your family, just like that, or don't always need to be with them. And in a very similar way to us as well, similar ages will break away. If they're mating pairs, they'll break away. And that basically goes for all animals. And it's not essential for them to be with their partner, or if they're a monogamous bird, for example, they can still maintain that relationship and not spend all the time with their partner or their pride or their herd. I'm very thankful for this short grass on the side. Hopefully it'll allow us to see them. Did you see how perfectly the color of their fur matches the color of the drying grass? Let's try here. So somebody else is on Triple M checking if there's tracks coming out. There's none, so they must still be in this block. So let's hope that we find them again.
If you love to watch Wild Earth, then we are inviting you to join our Explorers program. For a monthly subscription, you will have the opportunity to win fantastic Wild Earth expeditions. Join our guides for a chat around the fire, receive weekly highlights from our shows, and much more. All the money will go to keeping these live safaris on air, which in turn allows us to escape into nature every single day. The Mara Triangle is a jewel in the Kenyan conservation crown, and thanks to the dedication of the Mara Conservancy, it thrives as one of Earth's greatest national treasures.
We have been experiencing a reduction in the waste nets that we collect on a monthly basis, and this is basically attributed to our intense patrols.
Over the years, this courageous team of anti-poachers has reduced poaching to almost zero.
Mimi naitwa Stephen Olereso. Nimefanya kazi miaka 16 sasa. Kuanzia miaka 2002. Hao wanadamu ni wenye utua sana sana inaogofya ni wale wenye wanaenda kama ndovu. Wanatumia kama bunduki. Sasa hiyo ndio huwa inakuanga hatari sana sana kwa sisi.
As a result of the global pandemic and the massive reduction in tourist revenue, the Mara Triangle is facing a financial crisis. They need your help if they are to continue their ability to protect this magical land.
I'm Nikki here at Ambion Ngala in South Africa. I love getting questions from viewers about all the small things within the environment and how it all is integrated with one another. If you want to ask me any questions, please simply register with the Wild Earth website, head across to the Live Safari page, and then post your questions there. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my next Wild Earth drive.
Guys, have a look at what we've got. This is better than my birthday. Look at that. This is the first time that I ever see cubs this small. This is so special. This has officially just become my best sighting of all times.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
Well, we are still trying to look for these lions. Lots of impala around, but none of them look too concerned about the possibility of lions. So we're going to change the strategy just a little bit and start to head a little bit east. Maybe all of the pride didn't come across this way, and there's some that are still on that end where we first had the tracks, and these ones went to meet up with them. So we're going to try that out and see if it works. If not, then we'll just keep on bumbling and see what else we can find. There could be Inkahuma youngsters, there could be Telematis as well. Either of which I'd be very happy to see the whole pride of. Tom, you'd like to know if lions have multiple territories? No, they hold a single territory. Their territory can move and change. But not, actually, they won't have one territory here in Djuma and a different territory in Torchwood or something like that. They could have a territory that includes both Djuma and Torchwood. But could not fish it. And territories can move and change depending on the males that are around, the coalition that is around, other prides, pressure from other prides. If the pride itself is getting too big, they can expand their territory, because all the territory is an area that's defended. But the purpose of defending an area is to keep certain resources to yourself. So if Djuma is one pride's territory, another pride is not going to come in unless one pride's territory, another pride is not going to come in unless they want to, do a push the pride whose territory Djuma is, push them out and collect territory of their own. They're not going to come in, so there'll probably be a fight of some sorts. But everything that's on Djuma will be the resource of the pride that's already there. So impalas and things like that. So territories are there so that you can keep certain resources to yourself. Anyway, I'm not the only one searching for lions. I think Eric was too.
So we are running out of options with the lion tracks that we've got, unfortunately. The ones that we're heading in the opposite direction to where I wanted to check, there's a few guys that are on foot trying to track them at the moment. They've walked into quite a big block where there's no point us checking the next road because they might not have come out. It's also quite a dodgy area in terms of signal, so we just thought that we would carry on for a little bit and check down this area where the cheetah was seen yesterday morning. And we are driving through this area again. There's quite a lot of impalas around here, which always will suit the cheetah. We're just coming into the area now, so we'll have a quick look around there, and then probably, if we don't find anything from here, head back towards the river. The lions that we were with yesterday, I mentioned that the one and only lion that we were missing was the oldest lioness of the pride. And it looks like one of the rangers, Rule, managed to find her with two other lions. And they're quite far away from us, so if we don't find any cheetah around this area, we'll end up heading back down towards that area to see if we can see how she's doing. So we are just about to check another big open area on the right-hand side. And whilst we do that, I think Trishad has got some good animals she wants to show you.
Yes, in fact, our luck, or our change in strategy, was just the perfect thing. We caught up with these lions again. I'm still not sure who they are, but my gut is telling me Telemati. Oh, look at this. So there's 3 females and this male. This is just beautiful. Eesh, they're so nice. So stealthily walking next to us. They're a little bloody. That female in the back. Gosh, how careful, deliberate was this young male as he walked past us. How amazing was that? And there's more to come, guys. I hope he's not injured, causing him to walk like that, but he looked so careful. They looked tired. Gosh. Lisa, you say, oh my word, they're so close to the vehicle. They are, but also remember that if they were not comfortable, if they were scared or threatened or anything like that, they have so much space to move elsewhere or away from us if they wanted to. So it's only because they don't feel threatened that they are happy to move this close to the vehicle. You know, it doesn't get any easier on your heart, especially when they're a little bit curious about you. And they come close to you. But it is such a special experience. It's something that you can never take for granted. Especially, as you were saying, Lisa, when they come close to your vehicle like this. It's a mixed feeling. It's a feeling of, you know, anything can happen. Now I'm in the pause. Oh, sorry. Shame. She just tripped. I'm in the paws of the lion at this point, you know. Anything can happen, despite how predictable you they can be, or the assumptions you can make about them and how well you can interpret their behavior. Regardless, you are in their hands, and that feeling is a special one. I'm in awe of the pace at which they've moved. Isn't it just calming? Looks Gracie, you'd like to know if it's common for some males not to have a mate or a main. Just gonna get clarification. They're from a male, or okay, there we go. A main. Is it common for some males not to have a main? No, it's not common. But if you're talking about the males that we just saw, it's because they're young males. Their mane hasn't developed just yet. So by the time they're about 1 year to 2 years, that mane is, you can almost see it. Kind of like stubble, if you imagine that. And when we go around and have a better look at him, you'll be able to see that his mane is definitely there. It's just not the full-grown mane of a 5 to 7 year old male lion, but it's not common for them not to have manes. He's just a youngster. What can cause lions to not have manes? You can get maneless lions. You can also get females with manes, but those are very much outliers, and it has to do with hormonal issues or imbalances. Now, also, if male lions have been castrated, their manes, the manes of males can fall off. This looks like the last of the lot to go and join the pride. So we're going to swing round and see where they've settled down, and we're going to send you over to Tristan on the dam cam.
Well, unfortunately, we haven't found much, but we have got a brown snake eagle, which is always nice. I'm sorry that it's going to feel like the camera's sort of moving all over the place. As you can see with his feathers on the back of his head, is that there is a lot of wind blowing, and he's quite far away from where the camera is. And so, unfortunately, there's a lot of kind of shake. I'll come back a little bit just so we don't have as much. Oh, it doesn't really change much, does it? But anyway, he's sitting on top of his tree, just scouting out. This is what brown snake eagles do, is that they are pretty much birds that sit on top of perches, and then from there, they will try their very best to spot something that they can then swoop down and grab. Particularly, obviously, snakes is what we're talking about, so maybe JP needs to employ the services of this fella in order to track down that snake that he was looking for. But you can see how the wind is blowing all those feathers on the back of their head. Now, to tell it's a brown snake eagle is very easy. They have a very distinctive look. Firstly is that they sit quite upright on the tree. So you see it's got quite a sort of upright stance when it's sitting. And then if you look on the tree itself, you'll notice that there's quite white legs. I'll try go in a little bit. I know that it's tricky to see, but they've got very, very white legs. And that's because they lack feathers. So these are little hardened scales that come down. And then they've got a very rounded, robust head in comparison to their body. Their head almost looks a little bit big for their body. And then a very, very, very recurved beak and a bright yellow eye. And there's really nothing else that looks anything remotely like this out here. I know brown eagles can be quite tricky. But when it comes to snake eagle, just the profile, even this, if it was black and it was kind of just a silhouette, which it mostly is at this stage, you can tell straight away just from that beak, the shape of the head, the legs, and this upright stance that you're dealing with a brown snake eagle. There's that little yellow eye. You can just see it every now and then. It catches the light. They've got the most beautiful bright yellow eyes when the light catches them. Very, very, very pretty. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know if maybe the dogs are around, because if I come out a little bit, don't know if it's still here, there was a lone female impala walking around looking very, very jittery, and kind of struggling to kind of move around. It was looking and staring in all kinds of different directions and all on its own, which is very unusual. All right, I'll keep a lookout though and see if maybe the dogs do arrive. In the meantime, send you to Impala, who seems to have had some luck with some spots.
We certainly have had some luck. We just managed to find these cheetah that we came into the area looking for. And they are playing around a lot. The 3 cubs seem to be having a really good time. They're chasing each other around this bush, and there's occasionally a branch that they seem to be attracted by. This is one of the nice things about cheetahs, that they are so active during the daytime. So even though it's starting to warm up a bit, we still get to see so much activity like this. And these cubs just seem to be having a good time playing around and chasing each other. The mother is just off to the left, and she's sit in a spot where she's in some shade, and it looks like she's still quite alert, scanning around this area. I mentioned just as we went to Tswalu that how many impalas there are in this area, and if she sees an opportunity, you never know, she might decide to take it. And it's really been such a privilege to be able to watch these cheetah over the last week. And it's very uncommon for them to stick around one area so long at Impala. So this area, I think, just suits cheetahs so well. I mean, they've got these bushes where they can find shade, but between these big guarri bushes, there's pretty much no other tree. And so it's nice and open. They can potentially reach the full speed that they can get to. And then the mother gets to scan around and see approaching predators coming from a distance, which allows the cubs to be so playful like they are now. Dom, so I would say the most common prey species that cheetah go after on Impala would be impala. And I think just the biggest reason being, this is the mom, she's coming to join in now. So impala by far, just because they occur in similar areas to where cheetah like to go towards to hunt. All 4 of them now chasing each other around. Don, at this time of year, with those impalas rutting, they make it quite easy for these cheetah to at least find an opportunity to hunt. And they're at a very interesting stage, because these cheetah cubs are developing their skills to become skilled hunters like their mother. And so they'll be joining in with the mum when they're hunting. And what she'll do is she'll catch something and not necessarily kill it, but just let it go and get the cubs practicing the proper killing techniques to really kill something efficiently and quickly. She's moving out through the bushes. So it looks like they're moving through this bush, and she might be continuing on, hopefully looking for a hunting opportunity. Whilst we follow her, we'll send you across to JB.
Good morning and welcome back to Pridelands. It seems that our mornings are becoming quite quiet and our afternoons are becoming incredibly busy with a number of different game species. What we have noticed as we were walking is a number of different tracks. Now, earlier on in the episode, we were asked if and how we know when an animal has moved past the area, especially when we were looking at the snake track and we were asked how long ago did it go through there. So we normally categorize a track as fresh, or fairly fresh, or old. If it's fresh, that's always worthwhile following up. If it's fairly fresh, yeah, there's still a good chance that you can potentially locate depending on the species. However, if it's old, there's no value in actually following up on that track. But just to show you how we can quickly age a number of different tracks by a few examples that we have over here. So in the bigger picture, we can see that we had an elephant that moved through here. Here we can see the individual markings and indentations that's been left underneath the feet. And what we do find is that with elephant, that they have a unique crack pattern that they start forming. So we can actually use this to identify specific individuals should we choose to follow a specific individuals in a group. Then we've also noticed that there's a Warthog track that's over the elephant track. Now, if you compare the Warthog track, compare that to the edges and the sharpness of the tracks of the elephant, we know that this is also done after that the elephant has obviously came through the area, but it's not fresh. So this was done somewhere yesterday during the daytime when this warthog came through here. Also the reason why we know it's a warthog, it's an even-toed ungulate. You can see it's got a split in the middle and it's got a round appearance to the back and a round appearance to the front. But then we also have another track that we found over the elephant track, and this is from an African civet. And here you can see how the edges of this track is far more crisp, and it hasn't started crumbling compared to that of a warthog track or towards that of the elephant track. So we can definitely age this as the elephant track that has moved through the area somewhere yesterday. And we know that elephants can do a lot of walking, so therefore there's very little value for us following up on the elephant. But we also know that we're not going to follow up on the warthog. They're quite tricky because they can wander all over the place. And then we know that the civet has already gone to bed because it's a night active species. However, we also look over a number of the elephant tracks. We also see that zebra has come through the area. And here we get our zebra track, a very round track. It has no split in the center, but what you will notice is that it actually makes a tiny little triangle right over here. And that's the frog, which is typical of horse tracks. So there's a few little interesting tracks that we found that's moved through the area, and I hope it will help you in terms of aging tracks in future. We're going to start walking on and see what we can go and find, and hopefully we can get some animals. As we continue on our little footpath, we're going to hand you back to Eric, who's just located on Cheetah.
So these cheetah have moved slightly further into the clearings, and for now I've just stopped underneath the shade of that quarry tree. But it doesn't take too long before they kick off and they start chasing each other through these open clearings. The nice thing to know is that I've literally just seen the very first view of an impala. It's at the very edge of the clearing, and it was moving from from left to right away from the cheetah. And I think that might have caught the cheetah's attention, and that's why they've stopped underneath that tree. So you'll see, looks like the one's going to lie down there. And the one that's still got its head up and is scanning around is the mother. Where that impala is in relation to the cheetah is just big open grasslands. And so for it to get close enough to get within a reasonable striking distance will be very difficult. And the way that she's looking around past that impala, it doesn't look like she's that interested in it. But I mean, we saw that one cub disappear as it lay down. So it just goes to show how effective this color of the grass and their coat is, and how well they work together. And I mean, that's exactly what she'll use. So as soon as she gets within reach of that impala, she just disappears into that grass and just tries to creep as close as she can. It is always so impressive to see, because it must take so much effort and energy. So Keith, I think the special thing about Ngala and our cheetah viewing is that we see cheetahs come from all over the Kruger National Park. And so we don't really see, we see cheetahs coming in from other areas outside of the Kruger, but because they are so nomadic and they've got huge distances to roam and they get chased by predators, we see them occasionally, and then they'll often just move straight away out of the area. So sometimes we'll see cheetah once and then we never ever see it again. And then sometimes we get a situation like this where it's a mother with cubs and she's found a suitable area for her cubs, and she'll stay within this area and utilizes it as much as she can, and then she might end up moving off. So I worked at Pinder for 3 years, and it was a cat that we would see very regularly. We would see cheetah a lot. And cheetahs can definitely not take down a buffalo. And I think one of their biggest prey species would be something like, for a cheetah like this, I would say, and like an intermediate wildebeest, or maybe a fully grown female kudu. That might be something at the most that she'll be able to go for. Now, male cheetah are a lot bigger than what females are, and they've got much more strength. So if it's 2 or 3 of them working together in a hunt, they might be successful in going after a fully grown wildebeest, or maybe even a small zebra. But definitely not a buffalo. And I think a buffalo is just too big and they'll chase the cheetah away. And one thing that cheetah has, and its most crucial weapon, is its speed. And if it gets into a situation where it gets slightly injured and it can't run at full speed, then it's going to battle to find something to hunt. I'm just looking to the right because all 4 of them have reacted in the same way. And that mother's looking very intently to the right. I'm just trying to see. I can't, with my binoculars scan, I can't see anything. But like I was saying just before the question, I watch cheetah on a daily basis at Pinder, and I'd forgotten how much I actually missed them. And it's really nice to be able to sit and watch and appreciate them again.
Nestled on the banks of one of the largest lakes in the Sabi Sands lies an award-winning game lodge called Cheetah. Many of you will have been on safari here virtually with Wild Earth, but now we are offering you the chance to see it for yourself in person. Sign up to be a Wild Earth explorer before the end of April, and you and a friend could win 3 nights to this luxury lodge. In addition to the unforgettable safaris, you can unwind on the deck, relax in the pool, and even savor the various bush dining experiences. Cheetah's holistic approach to hospitality, with specific emphasis on conservation, will leave you with the very best memories of the African wild. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
I was quite surprised and excited to learn that I had won the Wild Earth prize for March. My wife and I started watching Wild Earth during the lockdown, just to allow us to get out of the day-to-day routine and enjoy some of the bush sightings. Our favorites, of course, are watching the birds when they show them sometimes, and especially the leopards. That's always nice to see on the show. She will definitely be going with me, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy all aspects of the prize, as we don't get out into the bush often enough. Thank you very much, Wild Earth.
My name is Ross, and I'm a field guide at and beyond Pinda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on Wild Earth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Look at this, the little one is up and about. Certainly hasn't had enough milk at this age. No amount of milk is enough. Oh, Corky. Too sweet. Oh, look at this. That is stunning.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
We have left our lovely lions. They're heading north through a really big block. Gallego shortcut, Aubrey's Road block. It's a really dense block with lots of little drainage lines, and it's not an easy one to get through. So we're going to let them carry on their morning, move north. Perhaps this afternoon we'll be able to see them again. It's likely that they'll settle down, I think, near Longpole or something like that, because that's where they tend. That's where they tend to settle, and it's starting to warm up quite a bit, so they're not gonna walk for too long. Even still, the breeze is quite cool. So here we have some Impala, which I'm sure are very glad that the lions have moved on. This ram has just chased away a younger ram. They'll chase them away even if they're not a competitor. These young rams, with 2 years old, they're not able to compete with big rams. In fact, they don't even have the type of machinery, or rather reproductive experience, and they're not at their prime to be able to actually mate with any females. So they're not a threat, but the behavior that is as a result of the testosterone is broad spectrum, shall we say. So any males will be chased and harassed during this time. Some of the littlest ones, a year old or so, with tiny little horns just poking through, they might be, or just over a year, they might be allowed to stay in the herd. And then those that are very young, that you can't see the horns of, well, that's the purpose. You can't see those horns, so they can easily be mistaken for little females and not be harassed when they're under a year old. Hi, Wonder Boy. You'd like to know from what age will the males start participating in rutting? As soon as they're fully mature. So that means when these horns, see how this Impala's horns are at the moment? When the horns take on that shape, which takes about 4 to 5 years, for it to take on that shape, that's when they can start to participate or start to truly feel the rut coming on. But it's only the Impalas that are in their prime, which is about 7 or 8 years old. He's chasing a young male behind us. Just gonna reverse. It's only when those rams in their prime, 7 or 8 years old, it's only when they're that age that they can actually maintain territories and actually defend them. So it's one thing to maintain, it's another thing to actually defend it. Shame, where's that young male gone to now? So I remember to start telling you about something, and I can't remember why we didn't end up in that discussion, and it was such a strange thing, because I said, I read this about goats. I wonder if it's the same about impalas, and that's as far as we got. What a cliffhanger. So goats also experience a kind of rut, where there's intense mating for a short period of time. And they can actually, so the purpose of the study is to find out how many of the females that fall pregnant, the ewes, how many of the ewes are actually fall pregnant by dominant males that are holding territories. And it was found that a lot more subordinate males are actually mating with ewes, and there he goes, and making them pregnant. And that's because the dominant individuals, the dominant rams that were holding the territories, were actually running out of sperm, because the sperm production couldn't keep up with the amount that they were mating. So even though they were physically mating with the ewes, nothing was happening. So then the subordinate or the less dominant individuals come in, and then, yeah, they come in there and they mate with the ewes, and they're the ones that get to sire the calves. Interesting, right? But that's for goats. So like I said, I don't know if that is true for other antelope, but it seems like something, hello big boss, seems like something that as a result of their circumstance, their mating ritual, which is this intensive period of mating, and as much as they can. So who knows? Look at you. Are you feeling proud? Gosh, he's in fantastic shape. Shiny and beautiful. Well, we're going to move on and see what other great animals we can find for the morning, but we're going to send you over to some cheetah that are relaxing in the meantime.
So the mother's lost interest on whatever she was hearing. I can hear lots of impala on the right, so I think that's what she was listening to. She is sleeping and resting in the shade. The cubs are doing the same. They've got their heads up every now and again, but after that little bit of playfulness and chasing each other around, they might settle down for now. What's really nice is that there's a constant cool breeze that's blowing from right to left. And so that will keep the cheetah with a chance of it getting moving in the middle of the daytime. And so she might just be biding her time and waiting for an opportunity to come towards her at this time of year, with those male impala chasing each other around. If she lies in one spot, you never know, maybe these males chase each other straight into the area. And it gives her a nice opportunity to hunt from here. So that one there, that's the mother. And then if you look just behind her head on the left, you might see some movement of one cub. And then another cub is just off to the right in the bushes. I'm sure the third one is somewhere around there, but in this long grass, struggling to see it. And so that's the third one. So Lisa, at what age do cheetahs start hunting? They hunt quite early on in relation to other cats, particularly lions. They don't really have a good skill level, so they might start joining the mother in on hunts regularly from about a year and a half old or so. And that's when she does that technique of catching something and stunning it and then letting it go for her 3 cubs to develop the skills of the strangulation and the vital bite of the throat. And then from when they're close to independence, they're pretty skilled hunters. I mean, they're not as skilled as the mother because they just don't have that experience. But the more the practice, the better they get. So again, they're just looking around, they're responding to another impala that's calling in the opposite direction. So they're pretty much surrounded by rutting male impalas at the moment. So when they get independent from about 2 years old, they're pretty skilled hunters, and they'll be quite capable of surviving by themselves. Within this group, we have seen 1 male and 2 females. And so when it comes time for them to move off, they'll all separate and they'll pretty much not see one another again. So the male will move off. Eventually he'll do a similar thing to lions and try and set up a territory. But the 2 females won't have a specific territory that they will protect and hunt and look after. They just wander through their home range. So now they're still very dependent on the mother, not only for hunting, but also to look after them against those threats that we find out here. And so all of them have got their heads down and their eyes closed, but that female will hardly ever put her head down for more than a few minutes before she picks her head up again and starts looking around. Mandy, that's also quite a difficult answer for me to give you an exact figure with regards to the success rates. They do have a relatively high success rate, I guess. It also just depends on a few things, like what they hunt, what the dynamics in the group is, but she spends a lot of time plotting and planning her hunts because she can't afford to just try and chase something. Because if she does get injured or if she burns too much energy, she won't be able to hunt as effectively next time. And so I think that time to plan and get into the right position and really choose her opportunities probably helps her out a bit, which might give her a slightly higher success rate. Whereas if you're watching lions, sometimes it's find something, chase after it. And if they get it, cool. If they don't, they'll try the next one. Whereas she's a lot more strategic. She needs to be very careful in the way that she moves around. Unfortunately here, although her success rate might be higher, if she catches something, and there's often a good chance of a scavenger coming in to chase her away from the carcass. And so as a result, if they catch something and they're successful, cheetah will eat a carcass unbelievably quickly. They will eat a fully grown male impala within half an hour or so, and they don't stop eating until they've eaten as much as they can. And then instead of hanging around the carcass and returning to feed, they will get up and move away from the carcass. And so we've actually seen that a few times here, where they caught a young wildebeest, and they caught an impala. They caught those in-between game drives, and we found them in the afternoon away from the carcass, about 200 meters apart from it. So if there were hyenas that managed to smell the stomach contents, they'll follow it straight to the carcass and not worry too much about chasing the cheetah away. There's the third cub. Just picked up its head, so it's right next to the one on that was in the bushes. We just couldn't see it because it was lying in the shrubs. I'm not sure. These cheetahs the females will never really form a coalition, and they will tend to be by themselves. And I think the biggest factor because of that is that they, although having more of them might help them hunting, they don't really have the strength to tackle anything bigger. And so there comes a point where there will just be too much competition around the carcass. And if you had 3 female cheetah together, they couldn't necessarily go after anything bigger than that female kudu that I mentioned. And so it just becomes, there's not really too much reward in staying together as a group rather than separating and being by yourself. Whereas lions, the more lions you have, the bigger things that they can hunt. You can see that pride of lions that we see regularly. They've been seen on buffalo carcasses, on giraffe carcasses. And so that's where it's rewarding, is if you've got more female lions, they can hunt bigger things and they can have more food to provide. Whereas cheetahs, it's very different. There's some shrieking in the distance. It sounds like a troop of baboons that might be coming through this area. I think that might be what they've been responding to, is those baboon calls. It'll be quite interesting to see the interactions between a cheetah and a baboon. And if I were to put money on it, I'd say the baboons would chase the cheetah off. But now that the mother's up, we'll spend a few more minutes to see what she decides to do. Whilst we wait whether she sleeps or moves on, we'll send you across to Trishala.
We've now come past the hyena den area and see if they were around. They're not, so we're going to slowly make our way to the south. Hopefully we'll get some elephants at the dam, maybe Treehouse Dam, which is where I am now, or twin dams, since clearly there's no elephants here at Treehouse. Let's just take it slow. Anything of interest around the edges? Any nice birds? Not as far as I can see. Well, at Twin Dams, there's the 2 hippos. Well, maybe 3. There was 3 at one point, so maybe there's there. Oh, I see a water monitor. Don't. It's just dropped down. It was just on that log. Let me see if I reverse a little bit, if we'll be able to get some height. Why are you so shy? There's a little one in the Mowati, like 40 centimeters or so. Nope, it's dropped down. Sorry for disrupting your sunbathing, Mr. Monitor. Or Mrs. Monitor. Hopefully there'll be some more at Twin Dams. I might take this way. So the dogs have ended up very, very north. So they were, from where we were, remember we were following the tracks west on Buffalo's cut line, and then we tucked into Djuma. Well, they did come into Djuma, but then they came out of Djuma again, very close to the gate, close to Sydney's Dam in Buffalo's, and then continued to move north, and now they're pretty much at the Manyaleti boundary. So a lot of movement happened in those very early hours of the morning. Most likely before we were even out. The tracks that we saw were good, probably about an hour or two old. So unfortunately they're most likely going to continue, either settle down there at the boundary, unlikely to see them, or move north. Hi Ralph, you'd like to know what is the most abundant herbivore here? That would be an impala, or the most abundant antelope. When you say herbivore, that makes things a little bit more challenging. Because many things only eat grass and vegetation. So impalas have been in this general area, Greater Kruger area. There's upwards of 150,000 maybe just in the Kruger, and you're looking at about 300,000 individuals in this area, including us, Kruger, neighboring areas. So that's a lot of herbivores. So my instinctual answer was an impala, but then also, you know, millipedes eat vegetation, or decomposing vegetation. So do tortoises. Leopard tortoises also herbivores. So when you say herbivores, it's making me think of other things too. What about birds that don't eat insects and things like that? So there's all of those to consider, but I'm quite sure that you're asking in terms of mammals. There are always in a system far more herbivores or prey species than there are predators, which is actually one of the reasons that it's very difficult to track lineages of predators, because the fossil record of predators is less than complete, far less than complete. Cats is a good example of that. There's so little known about the ancestry of big cats. There's about an 11 million year gap, and it's for that reason. I mean, there are little bits in between, like Panthera atrox and Blythiae, stuff like that. Those are ancient cats that help us piece together the big cat lineage, but otherwise it's known as a ghost lineage because there isn't much known about it. And one of those reasons is that because the fossils for predators are far fewer than those of herbivores, because there are far fewer predators in the area than prey items. Anyway, we're now going to head off to Twin Dams and see if there's a predator there.
When on safari, there's nothing better than an evening spent under the stars chatting around a fire, with the sounds of the wild all around you. If you sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer, you can build your own memories by joining our guides for regular fireside chats. Subscription payments can be made by PayPal, credit card, and now bank transfer. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
So in 1998, we had this idea to go and put a live web camera on a waterhole somewhere in the Sabi Sands next to the Kruger National Park. And I approached just about every single landowner and everybody thought I was completely crazy until I met Yuri and Pippa Moorman.
We thought it was definitely a fun idea and a worthwhile thing to experiment.
And it immediately became a runaway success. And it gave people all around the world the opportunity to watch a little piece of Africa day and night. Back in 1998, it was the very early stages of the internet. And all we were able to do was to get a 30-second refreshing JPEG out of that camera. But over time, what we began to do is focus more and more on trying to develop this concept of giving people the opportunity to go on safari.
Even though we live just 500 meters up this hill, we still put the camera on to see what's happening.
Absolutely, we watch it ourselves.
I love being a camera for Wild Earth. The animals coming right up close to you, especially like lions. Sometimes you get nervous, but you have to go with the flow. My favorite animal to film is the elephant because of how big it is. But when it's really up close to you, it's one animal that you would say, I really respect you.
The croc is still holding another one there. It's holding from the hindquarters. I would really want the wildebeest cross. Is it trying? The croc is holding the tail. It's holding tight. Oh no. Goodness me. Lucky, lucky wildebeest. You have another day to live.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Make your way, there's one station here. Things are looking quite good for us for now. That mother's looking around, and so what's happened is a male impala has chased a female into these clearings, and she's looking directly towards them. They somewhat look at the body language of the cub, so the cub has also just spotted them. And as we were watching them look at that impala, two other rams came bolting from the bushes behind us and behind the cheetah. And so she turned around and looked at them like she was in two minds. But I think she's more interested in the two in front. Looks like the young cub has just turned around and is looking at the two rams that are behind us. So I've just got view of the impala coming out of the bushes on the quite far up to the right, somewhere in there. And it's still very early days. We're just to the left of that big tree. And it's still far away for them. But you never know. And that's why, this is exactly why we've decided to just sit and wait and see what happens, because things can change in a heartbeat. From looking sleepy and looking like she wanted to rest to looking quite interested in something. She's now laying down again, so probably weighing up her options, thinking it's not the best option for her yet. But like I was saying, with all of these impalas going crazy and chasing each other around, there's always the potential of something happening. And what I find quite interesting is out of the four of them, it's just the mother and the one cub that are expressing any interest. The other two are quite happy sleeping. Just see now when the two of them are next to one another how much smaller that cub is on the left, so still got a bit of growing to do. And by the time they're looking ready to move, yeah, if you can hear that, those are the baboons calling. That got the other two cubs up very quickly. I wonder if that's playing a factor. If she got up and started moving towards those impala and the baboon spotted them, they would get an alarm called at, and those big male baboons will chase the cheetah away. So I'm sure that's something that's going through her mind at the moment. Can't see the baboons, but I'm sure they'll be in the tree line at the back. There you go, the impala. I think one thing that these cheetah cubs need to learn at this age is patience. And they just need to bide their time and wait for that opportunity to be much better. Because now, with their inexperience, they might just get up and run straight towards that impala and completely ruin the hunt. Now 3 of the 4 are watching quite intently. That one other cub is just happy to relax. Yeah, so it still looks like there could be something happening, and so because of that, Craig and I aren't going to move anywhere. We'll sit and wait it out and hopefully find some sort of action. But there's lots of animals that Pridelands has, so let's go see what they are.
Good morning and welcome back to Pridelands. We continued our walk and came back to Ndlovu Dam as not much was happening. We just located in a breeding herd of 15 elephants that are making their way down towards the dam. But our hippo is still back in the pool, and then we've also have a number of buffalo that came down for a drink. So let's see what everybody is getting up to. I'm really hoping that these elephants are possibly going to go and have a swim. For me, that's always a treat. But in the meanwhile, we've got 2 buffalo that are looking like they're a little bit edgy with one another and have to test their powers against one another. So quite often, buffalo will meet one another head on like that and start pushing and shoving one another around. If it does become serious, they quite often will run at one another at speeds of over 40 kilometers an hour. And that's the reason why the males have got that solid massive horn in the center of their skull. And that's to protect the brain when they do make impact with one another at these speeds. But for the moment, there's also no females, so there's nothing really to be very serious about. So normally when we do find a lot of intense fighting, as generally so when we do find the big breeding herds. It's likely that these are 2 males that have split it off from a group and have now just taken some time out to recover, gain their strength back, and then maybe they will go back into a breeding herd. Some of them will never return, but most individuals return for a short while again, compete, mate, and then move out, and then not return normally on the second time. Many of the old males that we find often that do not associate any longer with the breeding herds or with bachelor herds, as we sometimes find where it's an all-male group, tend to be normally very, very edgy. Because unlike members that are inside a group that shares safety in numbers, these guys are very vulnerable and they can easily charge. And quite often we also find that they show a large amounts of scars, which was a testimony of fighting off many a lion. morning, Jessica. And to answer your question, I've never seen fights being fatal, and it's normally just quite intense when it comes to buffalo. However, they still need their well-being to protect themselves against other predators. One of the things that we also find is that, unfortunately, it's not a feature that we can see, is how the ribs are designed so that they actually overlap one another to prevent that the horns can produce an injury if they should gorge one another from the side. I have seen fights often with elephants being fatal, and I've also seen fights quite often with lions being fatal, especially where there's a territorial takeover, where there's more dominant males coming in and then killing off other male lions that's in the area, or killing off the siblings of other male lions, especially so young male lions that can potentially one day compete with these other males. With elephants, I've seen it before where one of the elephant bulls have actually stabbed another one with a tusk and actually then punctured the lung with some of the organs, and the animal actually bled out. It walked for some 500, 600 meters and then suddenly dropped. What I did find quite fascinating was to see the amount of predators that came scavenging off that elephant for several days afterward. It was also close by to a river, and one of the things that I found quite astounding was that there was also a crocodile that came out from the river when the distance from there to the river was approximately some 500 meters, and he came feasting over there. And one evening when we found him there, big 4-meter crocodile, several hyenas, and then the hyenas were sneaking up to the crocodile, and then he would growl at them and then they would jump back. Eventually they figured out if they go and feed on the opposite side of the elephant, they are safe. In the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over and see what the others have on offer.
JP watches fighting buffalo. We are busy with feeding Egyptian geese. As you can see, they're taking advantage of the last of the grasses and the seeds that are on them, and they're basically just stripping off all the seed as they go. Now, this behavior is what gets them into trouble, particularly on golf courses, because not only do they do this to the long grass, but they do it to short grass, and apparently they are a nightmare, particularly on the greens, is that they eat the grass and then they poop everywhere, which for a greenskeeper is not a very, very nice thing. So Egyptian geese are not seen as friend to most golf courses, but they're going about their business pretty effectively. Now, the good news is while I've been sitting here, we quickly ran down to Rusty and had a little look, and so it is a fuel pump issue, but we were trying to get it going, and it led to steam coming out of pretty much all of his orifices at one point, and he didn't look very well, but Rusty's now back. I call Rusty a he, some call it a she, but he's a he in my book. He's too growly and revy to be a girl. But it looks like he'll be up and running, which is good news, so hopefully we'll be back out this afternoon. I'll have to send Marcel to go get a new fuel pump, which will be fine. Other than that, though, there's not really much has happened. Now, impalas, we had some impalas on the dam wall that were looking a little bit jittery, but I think it's more because there's quite a wind blowing, and when the wind blows, a lot of the animals, particularly the prey animals like impalas, they become a little bit nervy, and they don't like being choked off on a dam wall. When you have a dam wall, which I'll show you now, it becomes quite narrow, and particularly this dam wall, it's a tricky one for animals to cross, because if you look, it's quite narrow and there's steep banks on either side, which means that they don't have a huge escape point. There's water on one side, and on the other side is not really easy to get down, and so when they walk across here, they feel quite vulnerable, particularly because there's quite a lot of grassy areas where predators can hide, and when the wind is around, it just makes them a little bit kind of twitchy as they cross over. So they were kind of around, but they've disappeared since then. Oh, hello, Birchall starlings. What are you guys doing? A few starlings down in the bottom. One thing about the dam cam is you end up doing a lot of birding, particularly in the summer months, because there are a lot of birds around. Unlike in winter where it's mostly mammals that will be around the dam. In summer, it's a lot more kind of birding that takes place. But virtual starlings that have been there, we actually have seen quite a few birds, all things considered. There's quite a few little swifts that were flying around as well. Here, Jim, you're asking about genetic uniformity. And this is a long conversation, and I probably think that Trishala would be better suited to this because she's been talking about genetics throughout this whole situation, or whole morning drive. But genetic uniformity would be basically same genetics, if you put it into layman's terms. Genetics that run parallel to each other rather than changes in the genetic structure. So uniformity would be essentially, let's say, I'm trying to put it into a way that would be easy for most to understand, and even the kids that are watching. If we put it into words, would be basically, let's say if a leopard female and a leopard male, let's call it Tingana and Tandi, if they were to mate, right, and produce a cub, then they mate again and produce a different cub, those two cubs would have genetic uniformity. That's probably a good way to put it, I think. Maybe not, but that would be maybe a way that most people could understand. Trish would probably have a much better response to this. Like I say, she gets into the genetic side of things quite a lot and is quite interested in genetics. It's something in her science brain that she enjoys. Obviously, she spent a lot of time doing kind of genetic studies and those kinds of things when she was at the Sharks Board down on the coast of South Africa. I thought for a second there was a terrapin on the back of this hippo, but alas, no terrapin, I'm afraid. And just two hippos staring at each other, taking it very, very easy. So guys, I was really hoping we'd get some ellies today as well. That would have been nice, because it started out such a beautiful morning. It was quiet and there was no wind. But now that wind is kicked up, I don't think we're going to see too much in the way of ellies coming out just yet. I'm just scanning along. Often the ellies come, when they come down to this waterhole, they come from this left side. So they follow the drainage lines from Tamboti Dam, and then they come through and then arrive kind of in this general vicinity where we are now, and then they start to drink from there and then slowly make their way along the edge of the dam to drink. When it gets very dry and there's no water in the dam, then they come up to this little pan, but they won't be doing much of that these days. I thought I saw a little bird in this, and that's just the movement of the leaves. It's a bit tricky on this dam cam to always pick up what's moving in the vegetation, because sometimes when you get wind like this, there's glints on the leaves themselves, and often what we're looking for is just movement on here, because it's so wide to start with. Before you zoom in, it's not always that easy to pick up smaller little things that are moving around, particularly things like tucanas and little sandpipers, and they move around in amongst this vegetation and can be quite tricky to find. Nope, nothing that I can see there. Quiet, 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 I'm afraid. Oh, there's Trishala. Let's look at Trishala. Hello, Trish. How are you doing? There's Gert on the back. Let's zoom into Trish to say hello. She's now going back. I've got to try and keep up with her. No, Trish, you're moving too fast. I'll try to keep up with her. There we go. So we'll zoom into Trish waving. Oh, sorry, I've made the camera go too fast now because I was trying to keep up with her. She's now turning around. Mastering the art of driving a Land Rover is Trishala. Gert is looking at us as well. And there's of you that have had your nameplates put on the car. There are the nameplates on the back. And there's Trish driving off into the yonder. And while she disappears and goes and does her own thing, let's send you across to Ingala and see what they're up to.
So the cheetah got up and moved from one bush to another, and then she lay back down again. And I think the thing that got her to move was the baboons that were making a lot of noise. She got up and she almost went forward like she was investigating the noise, and then she lay back down. So her and her cubs have all settled down underneath the same bush. I see the mother's the one that's highest up, and then 2 cubs on the left, and I think 1 more cub on the right. Yeah, there we go. There's the last one. So I'm looking and waiting, expecting the baboons to come out into the open, but I think that they'll probably be in the tree line. See, now we've got 2 other impalas that are running towards us again. And see how the mother's reacted. She's got her head up, looking straight towards the impala, which is somewhere in the tree line. With this breeze, it's actually really nice because it doesn't feel as hot as it could be without the breeze. And at the moment, for anything up ahead of her, it's perfect because the wind direction is coming from the impala onto the cheetah. And Paul, cheetah cubs have got quite a tough life for them to make it to adulthood, and it is very difficult for them to do so. But, I mean, if the mother's made it this long with the 3 cubs, there's a good chance now that all 3 of them will make it. And they probably have encountered a few predators that they need to run away from. They're quite skilled in the fact that they've got the speed and the strength, almost that the mother has, so that they can get away from predators quite easy. The hardest thing for cheetahs is when they're small, when they're very vulnerable and the mother leaves them to go off and hunt. They can really, I mean, if a lion finds them, they can wipe out the whole litter in a few seconds. But now their chances are much more likely of surviving than if they were a lot younger. But even still, the mother doesn't relax. She's constantly looking around. Her head's always up. She sits up very often. So she realizes that they're still under threat. So she's gotten up and she's turned to face those 2 impala, but I mean, the same story throughout the whole morning. It's a very far distance for her to cover before she gets within a good striking distance. So I think for things to drastically change, she's either going to need to move or the impalas are going to need to get a lot closer. And it doesn't seem like either are quite likely. We'll wait a few more minutes and see what happens. But in the meantime, let's see what Rashad has got for us.
Aren't you so glad I went past the dam camp so that Tristan had our faces? We have fun out here. We do. It's always nice to, we just have fun out here. Anyway, you were chatting, it was a cute Jim. It's the name of the viewer. You were asking about genetic uniformity and what it is. So genetic uniformity is when there are many of the same genes within one species, and that's usually a result of asexual reproduction because the same genes are continuously being passed on. Genetic uniformity is not a good thing. So as humans, we have low genetic uniformity, which is a good thing. So low genetic uniformity means that you have a higher genetic diversity, which is what you want. In fact, the animal that has the highest genetic diversity is a nematode. Can you believe it? But that's also because they cycle through genes very, very quickly. So they're able to get variation within their genome very quickly as well. So when we usually talk about genetic uniformity, it's not, we don't usually talk about in the context of animals, though we can, but there's not a huge problem with genetic uniformity within animals. There is a huge problem with genetic uniformity in things like crops, food crops especially. So food crops are made up of usually the same plants, and the plants that do well, the specific type of species, even a specific type of individual that does well becomes propagated. A good example of that is bananas. So the bananas that we all eat, all of us, if you've seen it in the grocery store and you buy a banana in Canada and I buy a banana here in South Africa, they're genetically identical. I think it's called the Cavendish, is the name of the species. It used to be the Michelle Gros. I know this is such a strange thing for me to remember, but it's true. So everyone in the world at the moment is eating a banana who's called the Cavendish. And it is genetically identical. And that's because it works. But that is basically the peak example of genetic uniformity. The problem with that is, if something comes out, if there's one tiny little fungal infection, bacterial infection, some insect that's going to attack those Cavendish bananas, the entire population of bananas across the world will be wiped out. That's just one example. So when you talk about genetic uniformity, even though it sounds like a very pleasant tag, it's not. It means that there's less diversity in the genome of that creature, whether it's an animal or a plant. Obviously, the more inbreeding that happens, like Tristan was saying to you, within the leopards, there's a certain amount of inbreeding that will not result in a horrible genetic defect, and it's something between like 3 and 6 inbreeds, as in actions of inbreeding. But there's still some variation because each animal is still being produced sexually, not asexually. So to sum up, without the inclusion of the bananas, genetic uniformity is usually a result of asexual reproduction that is I remember clicking on it because it was a very interesting thing. I didn't know the commercial banana was a certain type, let alone genetically identical individuals across the world. And also, since we're on that topic, the banana plant is the largest herb in the world. There we go. I drop my mic now. All I know about bananas has just been spilt. Banana spilt. I see everyone in FC just kind of shaking their heads on me. That's okay. That's okay. I am now going to go up onto Buffelshoek boundary, do a loop and come round back towards home because it's close to that time. And maybe you'll be lucky and those lions pop out just in time, or didn't pop out yet. Either way, we're going to see and see if there's tracks. If there are tracks, we'll know where they went. If not, maybe there's hope that we can see them because they'll pop out just in time for us at the end of drive. Anyway, Eric is also on a Bumble, so let me send you over to him. think you're still with me. I think. Never mind. You're still with me. Let's have some fun. Nobody's checked the boundary since the lions came in this way. Well, not exactly here. I'll show you where. Hi Daisy, you'd like to know how do animals take cover from wildfires? They generally don't take cover from them, they just flee the area. And wildfires are quite easy to detect as an animal because there's a change in temperature and there's a change in the composition of the air. So it's easy to detect that something's off, and then they make a move. So they don't really duck down anywhere, they just get out of the way, because when it comes to a wildfire, you need to get out of the way. Nothing you're going to do is going to keep you from getting burnt. There's certain jewel beetles. Like not all creatures want to run away from wildfires. There's some that want to run towards them, like some jewel beetles, and there were a few birds as well, predatory birds. What these predatory birds were seen to do was actually follow the wildfires and then grab any of those small mammals that would be fleeing the area. They're even known to pick up a blazing piece of grass or something and drop it somewhere else to flush out animals. Anyway, that was just a bit of a segue. There's some jewel beetles that specifically need to lay their eggs in wood that has been burnt but is not still burning. So they will often go and seek out wildfires, and they do that with special kind of dips near the sides of their heads that can pick up on temperature change and, like we said, the composition of those different chemicals in the air. So they're like little bubbles on the side of their head with a tiny little hair in it, and when that bubble has picked up enough of whatever molecule is being released in the fire, it swells up and it moves that hair, and it lets the beetle know that there's a fire close by. In fact, that type of technology is being manipulated to be used for human detection of fires too. But most animals will just get out of there. If they can't get out of the way, they'll either end up injured or dead. I'm sorry, I was looking in the wrong place for tracks. It's a bit further down. Looking for tracks between these two. Hi Nina, that is a great question. Nina would like to know how snakes climb trees. A snake's body is very muscular, and that allows it to contract and expand parts of its body very well. And the other thing is that a tree, the bark of a tree has lots of, it's not smooth, right? So there's enough friction for it to hold against the tree. So if you've ever had a python on you, you know, like when you're in school and stuff like that, or if you go to some reptile center, they'll put a python on you and you can take a picture. You'll find that even when it's against your skin, it's not just draped over your skin. There's pressure being applied to you. So it's that pressure that allows them, so there's force, they're pushing against the tree. They're not just they're just gliding up it. And that's how they're able to climb it. When I was little, I also thought the same thing. How are they able to climb up? That's because growing up in KZN, snakes all over the place. And I'd often wonder how they get in the bathroom window. How do they climb a wall? but it's because they are applying force, and they're using the friction that is on the wall or the tree to help them move along. And they can move one part of their body where it's feeling nice and tight, hold there, and then pick up the rest of the body. If it's a very smooth surface, no, they won't be able to climb up it, but a tree, most definitely. The other thing is, once they get to a certain part in a tree, a certain limb, etc., hold on the rest of the body, then move on to another part. So it's about finding areas where they can feel secure in movement, and then using those to anchor themselves and parts of their body elsewhere, and then they slowly start to move. As long as they've got those anchors, other parts of their body can move. This is where I am looking now for tracks of our lions to come out. I might maybe turn around and go on the fire break. Let's do that. Let's take the fire break and see if we'll be lucky. Because I'm seeing no tracks for them coming out. Yeah, let's take this one. I saw about tracks for what looks like the entire hyena clan on Gowrie, Maine when I was there by Twin Dams. So that was interesting because they all seem to come out of one particular path. Lots and lots and lots of tracks. So, but they were coming back into Djuma, the tracks were at least, but something must have happened around that area. For all that movement, hyena movement. So now we're going to, okay, no, let's take Gallego shortcut. And I'm tossing up today. They were closer, I think, to the Gallego shortcut, the eastern side than the western side of the block. So let's try here. Okay, still no tracks, but that's okay. That's okay. That hopefully will mean that they're in the block and that this afternoon we'll have them anyway. So down I go, down Gallego shortcut.
On the 27th of April, Wild Earth will be turning 14 years old, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of you. And to celebrate, we will be finishing the beautiful book that we started last year that looks at the history so far. But we do need you to be part of it. Please submit your most memorable sighting, or what Wild Earth means to you, or even just your name and a comment to be included inside the book. Head over to the website to add your name and reserve your copy. And a big thank you to all of you who have contributed to the book so far.
For many years, Wild Earth has taken viewers from around the world to the Mara Triangle, a place of majestic beauty and abundant wildlife. But it wasn't always like this. Before 2001, it was infested with poachers. Illegal harvesting and hunting was rife. Now the situation couldn't be more different. The hard work and dedication of the Mara Conservancy has revolutionized this magical land. But now, the loss of revenue from tourism has created a grave crisis. The Mara Conservancy needs help if they are to continue protecting the reserve and supporting the local communities whose livelihood depend on its survival.
My name is Taylor McCurdy and I work for Eco Training. I love hearing from all of the viewers. However, I particularly enjoy those of you who have been watching for a few years. Your questions are just so advanced and they really get me thinking. If you'd like to ask a question on Wild Earth, you need to register on our website. Once you've done that, head to the live safari page and submit your questions below the live feed.
I think I'm going to actually turn off the vehicle and we'll do our electric vehicle down Calico shortcut. Very fancy. Just allows me to hear better. There's one set of the tracks that we're heading north. But we saw quite a few individuals, so I'm hoping to find more tracks or an actual lion. That was short-lived. It's quieter down here. It was a little bit noisier with the sticklers going further up. Pat, you'd like to know if the tracks will still be there this afternoon? Yes, unless somebody drives over them. They will still be there, but it's okay. As long as we've seen them once, it's all right. Because then I can let other people know that there were tracks, 50 meters south of the junction. So as long as someone sees it, it's okay. You can drive over them. But if I was not out, or if it was my last day or something like that, and then I was going to go away, I would need to tell somebody, or it might completely get lost if someone drives over it. But usually people are pretty good in making sure that they look out for tracks. And if the tracks are good, there shouldn't just be one set of them. You should be able to follow them, and the car is unlikely to drive over all of them. In fact, it'd be very unfortunate if it drove over all of the tracks. I have a good feeling, but we only have about a minute left. So maybe it's a good feeling for this afternoon. Let's stop and listen for a little bit. This is what I mean about this block. Lots of drainage is difficult to go through, but a nice view of the bush for us to end with. Thank you everybody for all your questions and your comments. Have an excellent day further. We'll see you this afternoon for Sunset Safari, hopefully with some lions too.